in half a minute. Simi will introduce the program chair and then can chair, and I will, yes, Simi in 10 seconds.
A very good evening to one and all. I am Simi Mehta, CEO and Editorial Director of Impact and Policy Research Institute, and I warmly welcome all of you to this special day and to this special lecture by Professor Amita Singh. Executive and legislatures have had their own electoral pressures and considerations, since winning the next election is always supreme. And therefore, each policy is seen as a political investment. Civil service, government jobs, etc. They have all generated interests primarily for their job security, high salaries, promotion, and relaxed work culture. Several occasions, we have seen them compromised due to political pressures. And as a result, those at the receiving end are the common people who are embroiled in red tape, and as they await necessary signatures and movement of files from one table to the other. So in the current times of heralding an AtmaNirbhar Bharat and a new India, the country desperately requires administrative reforms. To provide insights into the theme, administrative reforms for an AtmaNirbhar Bharat, we have with us the expert on governance and administrative reforms, Professor Amita Singh, to deliver this lecture today, and an excellent panel of eminent experts. The session is chaired by Professor Amit Suryanarayan. I would take an opportunity to introduce to you Professor Amit Suryanarayana. It is my pleasure, sir, to introduce you to the audience. Professor Amit Suryanarayana has been a member of faculty at the Indira Gandhi Institute of Development Research, IGIDR, Mumbai, since 1988. He's a development economist with experience in providing technical assistance in the preparation of human development reports, poverty reduction strategy papers, and tracking the Millennium Development Goals and now the Sustainable Development Goals. He has taught courses on statistics, econometrics, development economics, food policy analysis, human development, and Indian economy at the IGIDR and other postgraduate centers. Recently, he was the Indian Council of Cultural Relations, ICCR, chair in India Studies based at King's College London, at King's College London's India Institute. He has formulated and taught a course on food policy at the Maastricht Graduate School of Governance. Professor Suryanarayana has been serving as the editor of the Indian Journal of Agricultural Economics, as well as been a member of several expert panels at the ICSSR and with the union and state governments. Professor Suryanarayana was a consultant at the Ministry of Industry and Planning Commission, Government of India. He was a visiting fellow at the Economic Growth Center at Yale University and a senior economic advisor at the International Poverty Center of UNDP in Brasilia. Professor Suryanarayana has served as a consultant for the ADB, OECD, UNDP, and the World Bank, and provided technical assistance to developing country governments like Bangladesh, Botswana, Nepal, Somalia, Vietnam, and many more. Thank you very much, sir. It is a privilege for us to have you over as chairing this session today by Professor Amita Singh. I invite you to make your opening remarks, following which I would introduce the Professor Amita Singh to the audience. Over to you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Simi, and I greetings to all the participants. Good evening, and thank you. I would thank all of you, particularly IMPRI, for inviting me to chair this session on an important topic of discussion, on an important topic of contemporary policy reform. I would be, before initiating the discussion, I think I will just give a perspective from my side as an economist and as an economic methodologist. That's what I thought I would begin. As you know, this is AtmaNirbhar. It's an important public policy choice made by the government in pursuit of economic development, let me say, in the broad objective to facilitate faster growth and development objectives. As you know, the essence of economic development is that it involves both growth and structural change. That which means public policy of necessity of perforce has to be undergoing reforms periodically in response to changes in situations, in response to changes in constraints, in respect to changes in information, so many other factors, even in support infrastructure, etc. And if you let me just briefly give in 2 minutes about the Indian experience. If you look at India's public policy right from the first 5-year plan onwards, we'll see periodic changes. So for instance, the first 5-year plan laid emphasis on agricultural development and immediate short-term problem of rehabilitating the refugees and also food self-sufficiency. I emphasize food self-sufficiency because when we talk about AtmaNirbhar, again, we were talking, there is a different perspective. Some people say it is self-sufficiency. Some people say there is a self-reliance. What exactly you mean that? So I thought, so in fact, immediately after independence, we have been pursuing this question of self-sufficiency or self-reliance in some form or the other. The first 5-year plan focused on self-sufficiency in food grain production. And that moved to the second 5-year plan, it talked about industrialization by import substitution. Again, there is a perspective here. For example, I was referring, reading the some lecture references by Mr. Nitin Gadkari, who was talking about import substitution. That AtmaNirbhar essentially has an important dimension, that is import substitution. He was studying. Then moving on to the third 5-year plan, again it talks about agricultural development. And incidentally, in those days we had this 1962 war with China, then Pakistan, everything. As a result, the country had faced balance of payments problems, etc. And 1965 we had this drought, as a result of which the government started pursuing the food self-sufficiency in production. In other words, what I would like to say is that depending upon the perception of the government about these emerging situations or constraints or challenges, our policy objectives have changed periodically. That's one thing I would like to say. Similarly, instruments of policy have also changed. For instance, if you look at our first 4 decades of planning, till 1990, India tried to regulate the economy by using physical instruments like licensing, quotas, tariffs, quotas, etc. Post liberalization, India has been trying to regulate the economy in terms of financial instruments. That's one thing which I would like to say, emphasize. Again, if you look at it with policy, the strategies also have changed. If you look at the 6th 5-year plan, the perception was such that the government had to reduce poverty at any cost. So the government pursued a strategy of growth with redistribution. And in the 5th 5-year plan also, then the government also, from this 4th 5-year plan, government pursued a strategy of self-reliance, etc. So in other words, we see the government policy reforms or policy changes taking place in response to the emerging contemporary policy constraints or challenges, etc. But so you may evaluate and ask how far these policies have been successful, how effective they are. So one important issue that really matters is specification of the problem, understanding the problem. For instance, if you take a sick patient to the doctor, unless the doctor really diagnoses the properly, effectively, correctly, he may end up prescribing wrong medicines or something. You may end up with chemotherapy for just for flu. So in simple, it's very important to have a good understanding of the information base and specify the problem. That is one thing which I find when I go through when I teach a course on Indian economy, I always try to emphasize these issues in my lectures. For instance, if you look at the 6th 5-year plan, growth with redistribution. Government talked about poverty statistics, inequality, extent of inequality, etc. But we didn't have any information at all. But we built up, the government came up with some nice estimates, simulations, what will happen if there is growth, what will happen to poverty if there is only redistribution, etc. Whole academic community clapped. I'm not talking about the bureaucrats. Even the academic community clapped and people wrote papers and afters without really understanding the fundamentals that there was no information base at all. So these kind of challenges are there when it comes to, I will keep discussing about the AtmaNirbhar issue policy also. I think I'll just leave it to the open to the discussion. Maybe at the end, if I get a chance, I will talk about it. What is important for us to think about is specification of the problem. A good understanding of the problem is very, very important in any public policy exercise. But business is quite important, I think. In this context, I am very happy that I'm carrying a session where Professor Amita Singh is going to speak, and plus other experts. Professor Amita Singh, I know you're going to give a formal introduction, but I want to tell my perspective. I had as Dr. Nivedita has already pointed out, and I had a couple of occasions to work with Professor Amita Singh in the ICSR missions, review missions for different institutes, etc. One thing which I really admire about her is her clarity in her understanding of issues and her conviction when you make a policy recommend any solution or recommends any solution or to the issues that we discussed. She was very clear, and most important is her conviction, and she would swear by those recommendations. So this is what I always liked about her, working with her in several ICSR evaluation missions. So I really thank Arjun also for giving me this opportunity. I look forward to the discussion and the presentation from Professor Amita Singh, and also the discussion by other panel members, Professor Nivedita, Professor Tripathi, Professor Poonam, and everyone. So I really look forward to a very enlightening discussion and from now onwards. So I invite Professor Amita Singh to take the chair to start her presentation and initiate the discussion. Thank you.
Ma'am, we can formally have your introduction. Yes.
Thank you very much, sir, for your initial remarks. I now take the privilege and opportunity to introduce to you Professor Amita Singh, who is currently the president of the Network of Asia Pacific Schools and Institutes of Public Administration and Governance, Center for Disaster Research. She has been a professor of administrative reforms and emergency governance at the Center for the Study of Law and Governance, CSLG, at Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi, till very recently. Professor Singh has also been a co-founder of the Special Center for Disaster Research and member secretary of the Institutional Ethics Review Board at JNU. The Asia Pacific Governance Network, called the Network of Asia Pacific Schools and Institutes of Public Administration and Governance, is being led by her for many years as its Secretary General. Currently, she is a member of the International Network for Disaster Studies. Professor Singh, her research on administrative reforms has kept her very close to the Department of Administrative Reforms and Public Grievances, Government of India, and to many key institutions across the world. To name a few, include Global Innovators Network at the Harvard Kennedy School, the IT for Women Initiative at the Maryland University, Baltimore, the University of Southern Australia in Adelaide, and she has been twice awarded the Australia-India Council and the Australian government's Monash Fellowship. Recently, in 2017-18, she was a visiting scholar at the American University in Washington, D.C., and then at the Harvard University in US. Professor Singh is a remarkable and eminent author, and she has authored and edited several books and several national and international research papers. She is the series editor of the prestigious Palgrave Macmillan Global South series on disaster management, with 5 books in a row. Currently, she is the lead editor for the Global Handbook on Disaster Studies by Springer Nature. Professor Singh has been a recipient of many national and international awards, including the 2014 Bangladesh's National Award, the Nawab Bahadur Sayyid Nawab Ali Chaudhry National Award at Dhaka. Her other notable awards in the past are the Delhi's Public Service Award, NALSA Social Justice Award, Millennium Award for Women in Public Services, and the E-Governance Award in 2010. Professor Singh is an ardent campaigner for the habitat rights of the non-human species and leads the Gurgaon-based organization called Walk for Animals and Habitat. It is my pleasure and absolute honor to invite Professor Singh to deliver her special lecture. Thank you very much, ma'am, again for joining us and for accepting our invitation to chair this, to deliver this special lecture. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you very much. And I'm honored with such a starry panel all around. You know, I have to be very cautious with what I speak, because the insightful experienced people like Suryanarayana ji, like Nivedita ji, like Tripathi ji, Poonam, Munjal, you know, I have to keep my fingers crossed till the end. So but thank you very much. I'll try my best. Okay. So, you know, the two things here on which
we have the slides, or whenever you say on the screen.
you can put the slides.
Right.
Can you change this? Or I can do that. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, before I actually go to the slide number 1 of mine, I have to talk about, you know, what reforms are. Reforms are a political process, and nowhere is it a very altruistic desire of government to undertake reforms. It's well established, huge literature. People have got Nobel Prize to actually say that in the past. James Buchanan, you know, the Virginia School. And this has been going on. Now, to say that why reforms are never successful, you know, out of 570 plus suggestions which came with the first Administrative Reforms Commission, hardly 2 could actually find their way. And now with the second Administrative Reforms Commission, Suvartanji, you know, working day and night as the secretary of that, and Veerappa Moily, and 15 reports coming out in a span of 5 years. You know, the huge work, the number of people working at the ground level to collect data. And where are the reports now? 15 reports are lying in dust in the DARPG. So the thing is that why the reforms are never successful or very partially successful. So why is it that the government prefers not to undertake reforms, but then also takes up reforms and then also walks a little footsteps ahead towards it and then stops and then withdraws? Because it is a political process, it is connected to some kind of a political investment of each government. And to call it, you know, I often feel that I'm taking a shortcut when I say that it's a calculated political investment into the contemporary politics by each government. And then we come back to our constitution. In India, there have been, you know, we've got a major reformer as the first Prime Minister, Jawaharlal Nehru, and he was always talking very close to the bureaucracy that certain changes should take place. And the first Administrative Reforms Commission came up, despite his huge efforts, only after his death. And when it came up, you know, that, you know, Morarji Desai was the first chairperson, and then Hanumanthai came up the second one, and one after the other, you know, misfortunes after misfortune, and it was dumped. Then the second administrative reforms, so like that. But you see, the major triggering point of reforms was the Fifth Pay Commission. The Fifth Pay Commission actually amputated the past administrative system completely in this country and set up certain principles which were coming up in research but were never implemented. So there was something that the government could see beyond politics. And that was that there is overstaffing, there must be downsizing, or there must be right sizing, cost-effective policies, you must have speed, efficiency, transparency, accountability. The fundamentally 8 principles were selected that these should make the basis of any administrative reforms or changing bureaucratic system or institutions in this country. But for what? And that's where the politics gets silent. For what? What do you want to achieve? It was, we want to achieve globalization because the world is globalizing and we need to have investment. We need to have investment and encourage local entrepreneurship, and we need to encourage the programs prepared by the legislature. So The link of bureaucracy and implementation of programs was made very clear after the Fifth Pay Commission. And it also set up a new standard process for operations, which is that somewhere the income or the salaries or the incentives of the government servants would be related to also the performance standards. So the performance standards also come into the larger debate only after the Fifth Pay Commission 1995 onwards. But then again, everything went silent. And second, administrative reforms could not go very far, 15 reports, as I said. Now, today we analyze, and I'll focus on that. First, I'll focus on what is it the objective of AtmaNirbhar Bharat. It's been described by our Prime Minister as self-reliance and self-sufficiency. And the chair has already made it very clear whether it's self-reliance or self-sufficiency. We could just move further into that. Now, where does this Atmanirbharta idea come from? Is it there in the Constitution? Because if it's there in the Constitution, then definitely it will have a sustainable future. So we see that 3 articles of the Directive Principles of State Policy, Article 38, 39C and 40 as given in the slide, if read together, create a spirit of Atmanirbharta. Of course, self-reliance is a word which has only been mentioned in the context of Panchayati Raj, because it was expected that the higher institutions like the district magistrate office and the higher institution at the center and the state capitals are going to be self-sufficient in the way they train themselves, in the way they structure themselves. So not much thought actually went into the macro level thing. Even in the micro level thing, there was this mention of self-reliant governance at the village panchayat level, but then it took many years to actually achieve the self-reliance. Next slide. Yeah. So this Atmanirbhar Bharat starts on the 12th of May with an announcement of 20 lakh crore package. Now let's see whether the package is actually coming down to people. What is it that we need? As I said, that any policy, there are 3 stages actually in administrative reforms. One is that what the people need at that moment and how the government tries to fulfill that. And number 3, how the government tries to implement that. So the idea of government was 20 lakh crore package so that the failing economic system would be created little more optimistic, an environment of happiness, some SOPs to the failing businesses, MSMEs. And here we see that I can't go into the details, but I'll just point out on the problems that were embedded into the declaration of the 20 lakh crore package. Initially, the government did not make it clear whether this 20 lakh crore package is a disjunction from the previous packages that have come from RBI. And then in 2-3 days, it made it clear on questions when the critique started talking in the newspaper, it said, yes, it includes the previously given SOPs. That means RBI had given the liquidity SOPs, bond buying, etc. And as a result of which, if we take it in totality, it comes to around 8 lakh crore. So if 8 lakh crore goes out of 20 lakh crore, it comes to only 12 lakh crore as an economic SOP. And then there was a legality which was missed out because RBI and government are 2 different things. They cannot be merged into one. Over the years, 51 onwards, see, RBI takes care of the monetary policy and government takes care of the fiscal policy. The fiscal and the monetary cannot be combined together. It's constitutionally incorrect combination posture with which Atmanirbhar Bharat was launched. The third is, the major problem that comes in is that the economy was failing because of COVID-19. And what was the problem? The problem was lack of demand. The middle class and the upper classes, who had the money were holding the money to their chest because they didn't want to spend it. It was an environment of uncertainty. Now, how do you let these people open up their cupboards and, just start spending. The second problem is that where will they spend? Because all the grassroots are completely gone, missing out. So the problem was that government had to give direct funding expenditure. It should have come as a direct expenditure by the government, but instead of coming as a direct expenditure by the government, it came through the banks. Now you know the banking system in India. The banks would rather keep it and return it to the RBI, as the systems have always been. And as a result of which, there was no control of the government that the banks would actually give it where it is needed. So that was also that had the money, but nobody knew whether this would increase the demand, which was the crying call for the hour. Next slide. Yeah, so the 5 pillars of AtmaNirbhar Bharat, as mentioned in the policy program of the government, was number 1 was economy. Very good. The steps have been taken. Number 2 was infrastructure, absolutely necessary. Number 3 was the system, and in system they mentioned about the technological system, the e-governance system, which have to be in place so that direct money is transferred to the person to whom it is meant for. Then the 4th was demography, because demography capital is a great capital of this country, and we need to really look into. So very insightful that demography was mentioned as one of the pillars in the AtmaNirbhar Bharat, and we know that skill development courses should encourage every aspect of the social demography. And then the 5th one was a demand, that how you increase the demand. And we analyze the rest of the slides on the basis of these 5 pillars. Next slide. Now you see in the first installment, 5,94,550. Second, something around 3 lakhs crores. And in the third installment, where the COVID actually took its toll, it was, 1,50,000 crores. Now, this is the kind of very organized distributive system. How the allocation would take place was given by the government. This was to show that the stimulus provided would actually serve its purpose. Next slide. Now, this is just one example. There are several slides to each installment that was given by the first package, second package. I'm just mentioning one package, which is package 2. The food and micro enterprises. I would like you to listen to this a little carefully, because from this we derive the idea of where the money should go. Food micro enterprises, 10,000 crores. Pradhan Mantri Matsya Sampada Yojana, 20,000 crores. Operation Greens, 500 crores. Agri Infrastructure Fund, 1 lakh crores. Animal husbandry, promotion of herbal cultivation, beekeeping initiative. Now tell me one of these which could be done without using the unorganized informal sector. This is all unorganized informal sector investment. This is not done by the government. The government only has the offices. Rest of it, I'm sure Nivedita ji is going to share with us how, as the district magistrate and as the the chief secretary of Kerala, she had been working hard, moving around to get these people together, because the Pradhan Mantri Matsya Sampada Yojana has a great standing in Kerala. And to think about it, without market cooperatives or CBOs, community development organizations, or the NGO, is just impossible. Next slide. Now, organized sector versus the unorganized sector. Unorganized sector is giving us 50% of our GDP. It is employing around 85% of the people, the one of the biggest employer. And let's see what has happened to that in AtmaNirbhar Bharat, because I'm yet to come on the reforms. I'm just talking about the policy structure, because from this we will go to the reforms. On one side, we have public sector enterprises. How are they stifled? In strategic sectors, the government within the AtmaNirbhar Bharat said that the proportion in the strategic sector would be 1:4. That means one is going to work as a public sector enterprise, the others would be merged, privatized, brought under holding companies. Then it brought Insolvency and Bankruptcy Board of India changes, and the global tenders were pushed back, and only the local tenders would be accepted. The third is now the competition is being killed, at one point. We have to do some more research to find out, if the competition is killed, then what is the long-term effect of it? Because it's just started. AtmaNirbhar Bharat has just started. There are more changes which are likely to come. Then the threshold of default. Now, this is very important. Threshold of default under Section 4 of IBC, Insolvency and Bankruptcy Board of India, of the 2016 Act, was raised to 1 crore instead of 1 lakh. Now, does it affect in the COVID-19 times, whether you raise it to 1 crore from 1 lakh, how does it affect? Because ultimately the money is completely blocked. The systems are not functioning. There is no money to even share for salaries of the people who've been working. Now the default is definitely going to go much higher than 1 crore if 25 crores is the MSE's breaking point of being eligible for AtmaNirbhar Bharat SOPs. Now, NGO registration is another thing. Now, one of the latest one which has come is that all the NGOs which are getting foreign funding should be coming to Delhi to get their registration done at the SBI headquarters. The kind of NGOs that we've come across in West Bengal, interiors, the self-help groups, the registered CBOs, and in Odisha, and then in lots of other Kerala and all, kind of smaller NGOs which are combined under the Kudum Shri to serve, banana chips and leaves and other things. Now, do you think most of these governed by women, these women are going to come all the way to Delhi to get themselves registered? That means the middleman activity is going to start. And something is going to happen which will definitely kill Atmanirbharta in some way or the other. Now they are self-sufficient. The other is the unorganized sector. Let's see what happened over there. Construction sector, I'm just taking one, which is the second largest employer. It has about 85% of the labor force that works in the unorganized sector. And the kind of sites we saw, the migrant laborer running away from the big cities down to their villages during the beginning of the COVID times, that was the sector which was employed under the construction sector. There was something being wiped out in front of the eyes of government. And there was enormous silence when the government saw these people rushing around. Now, what happened here in the unorganized construction sector? 6 months, the government did a good thing by giving them 6 months extension to be treated all as force majeure. That means they can be allowed to close down without paying or penalized under the Bankruptcy Act. Their Registration Development Act, 30,000 crores, special liquidity for the firms that were dealing with non-banking finance companies, housing finance companies, and microfinance companies. Now, the developers and realtors were really happy on that when this came into RERA. But then they realized that something still not working. Why? Because they had to demand cartelization of stamp prices because the construction ought to begin. The supply chain was broken completely. The supply chain had to be restored. And it wouldn't be restored by providing a SOP or providing a legal support in one corner. Then the most important thing was that while the government brought up these changes, it forgot that the house buyer will still not go to the market to buy a house. Why? Because the tax SOPs on home loans was still not coming the way they should have come. This was a great opportunity that the government missed. If they had given tax SOPs, this was a 3 month, 6 months period, I'm sure the government would have given huge sops on the home loans and people would have rushed to buy and the demand would have increased at that level. Next. And then the government did another very good thing on which India's rank in the World Bank's Doing Business report improved from 142 in 2014 to 63 in 2019. Amazing how they did it. I yet to find out. I think the assessment is on the basis of the steps taken by the government, not about involving or analyzing the processes of implementation where administrative reforms take it forward. You know, to give birth to a child, I think, is the simplest process, but to hold the hand and see them grow and provide them a congenial environment to develop into a self-reliant person, confident person, is a more difficult parenting. That's where, you know, we can see that AtmaNirbhar Bharat left the hand at one point after the announcement. Now, helping attract potential investors and making India the easiest place to do business is something that our Prime Minister did by great foreign tours. He was going around asking people to invest, especially the diaspora was encouraged to invest. So lots of promises came by, but not the money. Next. There was this one good thing that I can say which came. Fast track investment clearance through empowered group of secretaries. This was long overdue, and even though the globalization related reforms had been coming through since 1991 onwards, this was a great demand in the second Administrative Reforms Commission also, but it was not coming through. So all good that the present government brought it across. We'll see whether it's functional or it's defunct or it's going slow. The project development cell in each ministry to prepare investable projects, coordinate with investors and central and state government. In an environment where the society is divided into religion, into caste, into my government and your government, the state government and the central government, it is, I think, very difficult for any bureaucrat to coordinate at this point. And I'm sure Chetna Attri is going to speak on how difficult study of coordination has been for her when she worked on bureaucracy. Ranking of states on investment attractiveness to compete for new investment is very difficult again, because who would create the ranking system? There have been no experts, there have been no Buddhijeevis, the economists into it. Now, who are these people? I'm sure the team is completely missed out on creating a ranking system on investment attractiveness. Now, supposing one has to take Kerala or West Bengal or Haryana or Uttar Pradesh. Now, how do you do that? Because the divisiveness is so deep. They like, very difficult to actually. Incentive schemes for promotion of new champion sectors, like this has been successful of Modi ji's government, and I think this should be taken forward, and this has so far got the right bureaucracy functioning in it. Next. Now, all these changes which have been brought under AtmaNirbhar Bharat, I'm now going to point out why the problem of implementing AtmaNirbhar Bharat to its ultimate optimum achieving level is going to be extremely challenging. Number one, e-office systems that the present government invests in, talks about, sells and markets has been quite a failure in a large number of institutions. The e-office systems is unaccountable. Let me share with you, we've done e-office system research, the Prime Minister's e-office system, with the President's e-office system. We've seen the e-offices of the major ministers, and we can provide you the data that the grievance takes enormous number of days to be responded to, and some go unresponded completely. It's very difficult. It's easier that you knock a door, take an appointment, and meet the minister. But this is very difficult. And it's unaccountable, because once you say your e-office letter is gone, now, once you say that you sent it, they can say that, no, it's not here. It's not in our system. Maybe there's something wrong. Then you go on looking in your system. If you have ever used the e-office systems, you would know that it is unaccountable without the citizens charter, and government has yet to give space to citizens charters with the e-office system. With one person not responding, then it should be legally liable for not responding within the time span mentioned in the citizens charter, because there are 7 things in 7 jobs in the citizens charter of this country where it is one-day governance system. SC/ST certificates, OBC certificate, driving license, and a number of things. They're all in one-day governance. If they are not provided, look at the district magistrates. They're not even responding because they're busy somewhere else. It's around the clock election work going on in this country. And we are failing on the administrative reforms that we're supposed to do. Number 2, the timeline for general services with no assurance from old pattern bureaucracy. Now, general services timeline, there's no assurance you will get the service done, because the bureaucracy on the other side is old pattern bureaucracy. Very few bureaucrats at the higher level, at the IAS level, are the ones who are pushing, but they can't push beyond the point. We've been meeting them, we've been talking to them. They say, what do? I can't throw them out. This is what I have to work with and work within. Third is project development cell in each ministry with older patterns. Now, there are project development cells, but the patterns are still very old. There is nobody to judge. Now, who's going to judge? If we put in a project, who's going to make an assessment whether the project is good or bad? Now, who's going to say that? If there's nobody to say that, then that means that this is all a fake talk we are going in. Some Tom, Dick, Harry would be sitting over there as an assessee of, the project, and one day push in a report, sorry, your project has been rejected. So people want to go to international organizations for project acceptance, but international organizations are mostly winding up. A large number of them have already wound up. And so Atmanirbharta, large number of researchers, young people, can you imagine the number of PhDs, fresh PhDs in the last 7 years? They are still awaiting for jobs. Did they work hard on their PhDs? Bright people, brilliant people, still awaiting jobs, not because there are no positions in the university, but because nobody wants to bell the cat. They don't want to. It's, every day I'm recommending a case because the e-office sends me something, whether you know this candidate, why this candidate should be, what are the qualities, 10-point grading system. And then whatever happens for 6 months, it's a Rip Van Winkle sleep. Now, ill-coordinated 3 layers of government, federal structures, there is ideological divisiveness, and let's accept there is excessive surveillance. And in this environment of surveillance, no bureaucrat would take any initiative which falls on his own shoulders, because jail is the easiest access today. Anyone can go there. Reforms never prosper in an environment of religious and caste divides. If I have to do a business, I should be trustworthy enough. People should come to me. They should work with me. They should willingly, they should not come with a heavy heart. Oh, I belong to this caste. I belong to this religion. So you may not like me, or you may just throw me out. Oh, let's not work with this master or this organization. It's controlled with somebody like this. This is happening. It's a reality. Let's accept it. Then the extra constitutional authorities are getting stronger. A 10th failed person is looking into the files of the universities who should be appointed and who should not. So imagine what is happening with the postings of the IAS and the IPS officers in this country. Next. So the reforms is not a one-stop shop. We know that RTI and Manrega reforms were preceded by enormous activism of many years. If you remember, let me take you back to Rajsamund, Ajmer, where people of the village, They banged into the Panchayat Pramukh's office, opened his box, and found out all the fake bills that he had been providing without work for building up wells, for offices, for building up schools and other things, and they were not there on the ground. And then they said RTI Act, and RTI Act came in. And I remember Arna Roy was there in Kennedy School to make a presentation on that. And by the time she returned here, the RTI Act was a reality. And Manrega, similarly, huge activism. So first of all, people should be charged. Do we have that activism today? It's subsided. And without the charged, energized people, the reforms would never go in the right direction. The most sustainable reforms are RTI and Manrega. See, the present government initially criticized Manrega, but Manrega came as the biggest sop at a time when there was nothing in sight for the poor migrant laborer returning to their villages. So the social unrest and civil society activism creates a demand. Bureaucracy and government responds to it. The constitution of a committee or administrative reforms committee actually looks into it and analyzes it. And the fourth is the report is tabled in the parliament, the ministries and ministers, they debate on that before the bureaucratic configuration to implement the reforms take place. Configuration is important because the right bureaucrat should be given a chance to implement something. If you have compliant bureaucracy at every level, no reform will be successful. Next. Now, this is what is the objective of any reform. It should generate resources. It should have legitimacy. With legitimacy for non-political science people right now, let me explain. Legitimacy means the kind of support that comes automatically from every section of the society to a particular reform initiated by the government. So legitimacy is enormously important, and the government should create a legitimacy for the reform measures or any announcement that it makes. And administrative capacity. Do we have the administrative capacity? The government should truly look into the administrative capacity. It leads to accountable and efficient reforms so that it reaches the last mile delivery. Last mile delivery, whom it is meant for. It should reach out to that. The path focus should be there. Next. Now this is, I like this picture because the damage of administrative reforms is that you carry so much load on yourself. The government takes up load of announcements without capacity to implement. You have to identify the right people to implement it, or you would be carrying your load all alone if you do not have a team with you. Thank you very much. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Professor Singh, for giving this very special lecture. And I would request now our chair to reflect upon the lecture and then start the panel discussion.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Arjun. Will you just open my PPT, the second slide? Yeah. I would like to say that, I really like Professor Amita's wonderful presentation. She was essentially looking at the different issues from a governance perspective. Essentially, she was listing the different phases in a government process and what are the constraints. And I'm looking at whatever she said. In fact, I fully agree because, I say from an economic methodological perspective, I presented what exactly she said. I have put up a slide which essentially summarizes what she said. For instance, but as an economist would do. For instance, right at the beginning, she said, for example, how successful it would be depend upon the government's understanding of what people need and how to fulfill those needs, etc. So initially, in the same way, from an economic methodological perspective, what I would say that is very first issue in any public policy formulation. It could be a new policy, or it can be a reform. It could be whatever she refers to, cited as a revolution also. Specification of the problem is very, very important. Have you really understood what exactly are the needs of the people? unless you have good understanding, it will be quite often you will be understanding. So essentially understanding whether a doctor understands the diagnosis of the problem correctly or not. I can be illustrated with different examples from Indian economic experience. For instance, we have a Food Security Act. Much was done about, people have highlighted so much and wrote articles. Hindu used to carry a newspaper articles almost every week. But the question is, we have not defined what is food security. What are the norms? What are the salient features? Again, we diagnose the problem using wrong information. We don't even know how to interpret whatever statistics is highlighted. If you look at the 11th Fire Plan document, or several experts, eminent experts who wrote several articles in journals like EPW, Social Scientist, everything, the same article under different titles, etc. You can say, oh, they didn't even know how to interpret these elementary statistics. Look at the 11th Fire Plan, and volume 2 and the chapter on social sector. It just looks at the estimates of mean average consumption and interprets, say that food insecurity situation has been declining badly in India. It is worsening. Poor people are suffering. Pity. It all makes all such statements just looking at estimates of average consumption of cereals and calorie. But the simple truth, a statistician would say that you can use average and generalize those results only if the distribution is normal or equal. Now, in real life, most of our income distribution is so highly skewed, unequal. We have most of the poor people. If you look at food consumption, anything you do, the poor people are the most deprived. In such a case, if you look at the averages, they really reflect what is happening to in the rich decile groups of the population. That's what is happening. If you really divide and the population into the different decile groups, different the poorest 10%, the next 10%, and up to, and simply if you divide the population into 10 equi-frequency groups, then you can clearly see that it is the rich people who have been decreasing their calorie intake, cereal consumption, etc. Maybe in the interest of their health or for whatever reasons. The poorest 30% of the population, their consumption has been increasing. In fact, if you look at, I'm talking about comparable data set. If you look at from the 1972 to 73 onwards, the poorest, the 30% of the population, they have experienced very substantial. That means, in terms of their percentages, almost about 50% increase in their cereal consumption and calorie intake. But we don't really know what exactly. So, what do the poor need? Do we know what is meant by food security? We don't have a definition of food security. In the international context, FAO, many countries, even Bangladesh, they have been talking in terms of diversity, diet diversity. What we need today is diet diversity. Again, if you look at the latest, 11th economic survey recently, they talked about thalinomics. They asked what are the cost of plate, a thali. Has it really gone down, increased, decreased, everything? Then it came out that really food security has really improved. It tried to say the cost of thali has declined, it said. Again, it resides in the context of the sustainable development goals. But of course, it is true. One of the objectives of sustainable development goals is to increase food security. Among the goals of food security, it also talks about improving the nutritional status of the child population. If so, why is the child population undernourished? It is in this context, there is a famous UNICEF study which talked about the Asian enigma. Essentially, what it was telling was that, even though countries like Bangladesh, India, and Pakistan are as better off or as worse off some of the sub-Saharan African countries in terms of per capita food grain production or in terms of per capita income. In fact, in terms of estimates of poverty, India, these South Asian countries are much better off, but still, child population is highly undernourished. Some 10 years back, almost about, Bangladesh, it was almost 70%, India also 65%, Pakistan also was the same scenario. Whereas in the sub-Saharan African countries, the child undernourishment was just about 30%. So UNICEF carried out, this is what it called the Asian enigma, and tried to look into these factors. Essentially, what it pointed to was that some of the important factors are which have really played a critical role in improving the child health status in sub-Saharan African countries are gender empowerment and child care during the first 1,000 days after conception. So these are the critical factors: child care, gender empowerment, and these are important critical factors which played a crucial role in the context of countries like in sub-Saharan African countries. Whereas India, Bangladesh, Pakistan lost out. Anyway, Bangladesh finally caught up at really remarkable progress. Last 10 years it has done. In this context, I want to cite one more factor before I really, conclude my this, comments on Professor Amita presentation. Another thing what I would like to say, I agree with most of her comments, but one important I also would like to highlight. Maybe I hope I have not missed out. I think she was talking about the different types of support, constitutional provisions, etc. I want to cite my experience in Bangladesh here. In Bangladesh, in pursuit of food security, the government of Bangladesh had a very clear definition of food security. And most important, Professor Amita was pointing out, people should know what they need and what is the government trying to do, what is their understanding, what is their involvement, why the government is doing whatever it is supposed to be. So in this context, I would like to tell you that one important policy measure the government of Bangladesh did was educating the different stakeholders. What does it mean then? In fact, as a part of its program on food security, government of Bangladesh made it compulsory for all colleges and universities in the country to introduce a course on food policy analysis. As a part of this program, it invited two experts, from Harvard, Professor Mohan Rao came. From India, I went there, and we conducted a course, for 1 full month, and we taught the teachers how to teach a course on food policy. This is finally, this is essentially to educate the public and make them understand what is food, what are the issues related to food insecurity, what are the appropriate policy response, etc. Not only teachers and university professors attended, even senior bureaucrats attended such lectures, and the government tried to educate them and inform them and involve them in the policy program implementation. I think this is one important. For instance, particularly when I look at the riots in Punjab or Haryana, everything, I think one important reason is that I think people should be informed. They should know, what is the government perception of their need and what the government is trying to do, how the government is trying to address. That Professor Amita also pointed out. The government should know what the people need, and how to fulfill them, and how to go about implementing, etc. It is in this context, government of Bangladesh, I think I really want to share with you all my experience. Not only that, the government of Bangladesh even now brings out fortnightly newsletters where it tries to show how exactly the government is going about. And I just want to make one last comment. The government was very, very pragmatic. Whenever there was a drought, the government completely withdrew from the market. It would import food grains either from India or China, so that the supply increases and market demand decreases, so prices fall down. So people can afford to buy those food grains. Whereas in India, if you look at the right from the 60s, the kind of zonal restrictions, everything government imposed, whether there is a drought or there is no drought, the government keeps on procuring food grains. As a result, particularly when during the period of zonal restrictions, food grain prices really shot up. But in Kerala, I still remember in 1965, prices when the zonal restrictions, restriction on food grain movement are imposed, prices shot up like anything. So essentially, what happened in food deficit states like Kerala really paid a very heavy price. So in other words, it is very important to understand not only, as Professor Amita pointed out, needs of the people, and also one has to see how to pursue the policy options to address these needs. I think it's very, very important. So these are my some of the comments on that, and I welcome other panel members here to come and provide their perspectives on this very interesting and contemporary policy issue. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Chair, for your comments. And I have also written in Ideas for India about the Thalinomics, what they have, especially in the context of Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Yojana, that they are suggesting 25 rupees for a meal. By that standard, if we have 2.5 meal, let us say 60-70 rupees per head. So we really highlighted that a cash transfer of 2,000 rupees would be appropriate, because 500 is such a less amount. So also just to give only targeting to those who actually need, not just sending too many. Anyhow, I think we'll touch upon all these issues So really to start the panel discussion, we have a very distinguished and I would say technical panel as well, many PABAT experts. So first of all, I would like to invite Dr. Nivedita P. Haran. Ma'am, your camera is off. If some disturbance was also coming. Yes, right. Let me quickly just introduce ma'am. Dr. Haran was former Additional Chief Secretary at Department of Home Affairs, Government of Karnataka. We so forward look to hear to you, ma'am. Yes.
Thank you. Actually, a small correction. It's not Karnataka, but Kerala.
I'm sorry.
It's all right. No problem. We are one country. I missed the last few moments of Professor Amita's lecture and Professor Suryanarayan's comments. Therefore, I seek apologies. Professor Amita has covered in great detail the historical background of ARC, the need for ARC, and how it connects to AtmaNirbhar Bharat. I will pick up a few points from it, and I will try to expand that, and especially based on my experience as a civil servant. As we all know, the administrative reforms, in administrative reforms, good governance is the bedrock of administrative reforms. Unless you have good governance, you can't have administrative reforms. And now, what is this good governance? Good governance implies good services to the people are satisfied, they are getting their good quality of life, and therefore everyone is happy and peaceful. That is basically the aim of administrative reforms. Now, is accountability, which is again one of the conditions for administrative reforms and good governance, how much is it enforceable and how much is it being enforced? That is a question. And Professor Suryanarayan mentioned how lack of accountability, and Professor Amita also touched on that, lack of accountability really puts a knot to anything that one tries to do. Same with efficiency, effectiveness. Our projects are, which are meant for 2 years completion, go on for 20 years, and there are no people who are held accountable, who are asked any questions. Transparency and openness, again, Professor Amita touched upon it. Transparency and openness is often in our country seen as a kind of, it's an instrument to harass people. It is not. We have to look at the positive side of transparency. Transparency is the main source of empowering people. And there is no better example than Kerala. Similarly, simplifying procedures, reducing levels, ensuring delegation of authority, ensuring that there is a single window system, etc., etc. Now, under all this, and Professor Amita mentioned the problem that one faces in that is the public grievance system. I was one of the first undersecretaries who was posted in public grievance, administrative and public grievances department in 1986-87. And I remember the days when we first started it, we were actually groping in the dark. We were not sure what exactly is the department doing and what exactly do we expect the other departments to do. So we set up the systems. We tried to ensure that there is a level of accountability. There is a system by which every grievance is responded to on a redressal, at a stage when it reaches a logical end and is responded to. Now, these are all part of administrative reforms. Where does Atmanirbharta stand here? I believe that Atmanirbharta is really, it's not just limited to AR, it covers the entire gamut of our lives. It covers the entire gamut of our activities, everything that is happening within the country. Secondly, it is not something that is either there or not there. It's an entire, it's something that will happen over a period of time. And therefore, it is not possible to say that from tomorrow we are becoming Atmanirbhar. The other thing I want to mention is Atmanirbharta is actually based on two pillars. One is Atma-Vishwas, being able to have the confidence, the self-confidence. And the second is Atma-Samman, the self-respect. Now, how is it that these are to come? If you are going to bring about Atma-Nirbharta, we need all these in order to ensure that we reach a stage where we can say that the country is really Atma-Nirbhar. I think the first thing that is to come is, as both the speakers earlier mentioned, the enforcement. We are very good at drafting policies, papers, etc. But when it comes to enforcement and implementation, we always seem to be falling behind. I think that is where it is extremely important that we ensure that enforcement of our projects, of our acts and rules and regulations are done in a manner that will ensure that the results are visible and there on the field. The second thing is, AR is not just government limited. It also applies to other agencies. And other agencies imply the private sector, the non-state actors, as we say. The education sector, the academicians, the common citizens, the corporate sector. It applies to everyone. You see, you cannot have administrative reforms or Atmanirbharta in isolation. It comes in the context of the entire gamut of these people who are working, who are part of this Bharat. The other thing is that Atmanirbharta and good administrative reforms can come only when we ensure that there are good practices which are followed everywhere. There is public propriety. And which will lead to lack of graft and corruption in our systems that we often complain of. But how does this come? I want to give an example. Often when I have gone to the academy at Missouri, one of the topics that I always touch upon is good land governance, because I personally believe that good governance can come only through good land governance, because land governance touches on the lives of every single individual in our country. And therefore, it has to be good land governance. But when I talk to the trainees there, I often find that the belief they have is that land governance is not a glamorous subject where anyone wants to take up anything. One. Secondly, it's something that will not impact on the lives of the people in a visible manner, and therefore you will not be noticed. And third, we are often given to understand that land governance is very different from state to state. I'm sorry to say it is not so. In our independent country, we have a situation where the impact of good governance will be visible on the lives of people, whether it is land governance or delivery of services, providing of certificates, etc., etc. It will all be visible when the bureaucrats, not just the higher level bureaucrats, but every bureaucrat up to the grassroots level realizes that he's accountable, one. Second, he has to make sure that whatever he does, he brings about a change for the better, two. And three, at the end of the day, he can actually say that he has made the difference. I think, and he has made the difference sometimes finding innovative ways to do it, doing it in a manner that will actually make the policy and the program and the act implementable. I think that is where finally what I would like to mention is that the whole thing should start from the training level, from the education level, which perhaps is not, has not really happened. In our lives, right from our home to entering school, to entering college, to entering a service, we undergo a lot of training. At each stage, we imbibe certain ideas, certain methodologies, certain values, which do not change, which continue through our lives. Unfortunately, these are not being addressed very robustly. And I think that is something that really needs to be looked into. How do we make sure that a basic discipline, certain basic values, basic understanding, basic empathy is drilled into our children, into our youngsters, which I think in a way we have not done it. And therefore, in a way, we have failed our future generations. But I want that to happen, because unless that happens, I don't think we can get people who will be able to really bring about administrative reforms or even think about Atmanirbharta in that manner. And I was amazed to hear somebody say that Atmanirbharta doesn't mean manufacturing in our country. It doesn't mean we do things on our own. It does. I'm sorry, it does. It means we do things the way we want to do it, the way it is best for us, and we do it in the best possible way we can. And we encourage the people who can do it within the country in our own way. I think that kind of an understanding, unless that comes, that would, Atmanirbharta would not be a success. And as I say, it's a spectrum, and it has to go from one stage to another. Finally, I want to mention that, as I always say, and this is something that has been a pet topic in our discussions with Professor Amita also, the huge gaps that exist, whether it is between the state and the non-state, between the private and the public, between the academicians and the bureaucrats, these gaps should not be there, because after all, we are all working towards the same aim. And we should all put our resources together so that we ensure that we don't make a difference between whether the person is not just, as Amitaji mentioned, from some creed, caste, etc., but also from which profession. We all bring our positives into it. And therefore, we bring that positive to make one huge difference, which unfortunately has not been happening. And I wish that happens. And once that happens, I'm sure we will be able to make sure, we will be able to claim that India is truly moving towards Atmanirbharta. I want to stop here. I don't want to go into too much of other things, but I wanted to touch on these few points. Thank you, Professor.
Thank you, ma'am, and for touching so many issues. And really, the land point which you raised is really something useful. I think in our panel discussion we can touch upon more nuanced things. Without wasting any time, let me go to our next panelist for the discussion, Shri Tripathi sir. Sir, your camera is off. Yes. Just let me introduce, sir. Shri Tripathi sir, also from the services IAS, is currently the director of Indian Institute of Public Administration, IIPA, New Delhi. Sir, over to you. You can.
Friends, a very warm welcome to each one of you from Indian Institute of Public Administration. I know out of the visible faces only Professor Amita Singh ji, so my good regard to her first, and then the rest of my colleagues in the panel. It's a privilege for me to be in this among the galaxy of speakers. And I had the benefit of listening to Professor Suryanarayana more than once, Professor Amita Singh for a longer duration, and my own colleague, respected colleague, Ms. Haran from Kerala. I'm from 85 batch, so that's how we set our score ourselves. So that's how I would like to put myself. Couple of points that were raised by each one of you, I would like to give my perspective, because now I have become, at least I am turning to be academic than pure bureaucrat. One or 2 points that need to be understood first. Why bureaucracy? I thought Professor Amita Singh restrained herself from making adverse comment on us, but we are having that freedom of making those comments about us, because after all, the bureaucracy's mass index is the one which is hated by everybody, including by the government. BMI otherwise is not very respectable, even for personal health. Increasing BMI is a sign of bad health, but increasing bureaucracy mass index is also not a good sign. If I compare India with any other similar democracy, let's say India has 72 ministries at the Government of India level. alone. USA has only 24, Japan has only 9. Does it mean we are better governed? Same thing is true for the purpose of bureaucracy. Madam Amita Singh very clearly told the structure of governance that India has adopted. The way a state will deal with its citizens is virtually enshrined in our constitution. Couple of articles Madam mentioned and I would not like to repeat. And governance and good governance is a matter of almost fundamental right. The very purpose of creating a state was providing safety and security physical. Later on it became financial and economic also. And with growth of a state, it has also become that a state is not only should provide equality of opportunity, but even should work towards equality of outcome. And it is this dilemma that has created problem for academics as well as bureaucrats together. What is the role of bureaucrat? What is the role of a state? And if these two roles are very clearly understood and defined, then any country can become AtmaNirbhar, any corporation can become viable, any entity can become sustainable. So to make anything sustainable, you need a, what we call it, the new IBMs, not the international business machine, but innovative business models. What are those innovations? What are the businesses and what are the models? These three aspects I would like to highlight the way I understand it. I will certainly give a disclaimer that I am not an academics. Doing some lecturing before joining IAS in Allahabad University, but that was only for 3 to 4 months only. And then I could not complete it there. And since got into IAS in the first chance, I didn't have much experience in the civil services also, except that I retired peacefully in January 2020. What is that innovation that we need? The best innovation that we need, and I mean the academic circle in India as well as bureaucratic circle both need to agree. As Madam Amita Singh has just said, the legitimacy of any system. Ultimately, democracy works on legitimacy, and through legitimacy only accountability and transparency comes. As long as I am a legitimate government, Musharraf was also a legitimate government. Because later on he got himself elected. Mr. Putin is also elected government. Mr. Xi is also an elected president of PRC. But same is not true for, let's say, Mr. Trump and for Mr. Modi or our current Prime Minister. Our legitimacy is hard-earned legitimacy. And it is not no longer party will nominate the president of the government or head of the government, the way we do for the purpose of office of president, where people are not selected based on tender or who's best suited, but who's best suited is for the ideology of the government. But head of the government, the prime minister, the chief minister, the local level panchayat sarpanch, all the three tiers that Madam mentioned, they are supposed to be legitimate, and only then they derive their authority. In India, unfortunately, if we take up the first 3 decades post-independence, there is legitimacy at the top level. There was never any doubt about it. Pandit Nehru has control over party as well as government. Later on, this dichotomy became too obvious. In fact, in the early 60s, there was the dichotomy between the legitimacy of the top itself was under question. The remaining 2 decades we had from 77 onwards until, let's say, 2014 on, up to 14 if we take up the turn of events, the legitimacy of the leadership, legitimacy of the government was always shaky. We always have a coalition dharma, this and that. I know it is not my area to comment, but fact remains that all these have an implication on the very policies of the state. We feel restrained that such things are not commented, and entire blame goes to the 5,645 IAS officers, as if rest of India is not civil. Only we are the civil servant. I'm not claiming immunity or force majeure clause for IAS. India has 2.2 crore bureaucrats, state and central combined. Government of India alone has 24 lakh bureaucrats, including 5,400 IAS officers. In fact, if we combine the total ruler, what we call it, they are deemed to be rulers, 5,800 MPs and MLAs, and 5,624 IAS officers. These two are generally known as they are blamed from sunset to sunrise, from health of individual to health of institution, and from Supreme Court to Ria's murder, and including how justice should be restored instantly. I'm making it very sweeping a statement for the sake of region that the disproportionate blame also is a reason for non-improvement in Indian institutions. In fact, the time has come that academic world should recognize it and come out with solutions, tailor-made solutions which are India-centric. We have been too often enamored by American solutions. Any solution requires that culture fit. It is not the best fit product. Bureaucracy cannot be derived of all these things. The bureaucracy is part of the whole. We come from the same milieu. We come with the same baggage. In fact, not only that, we come with the same biases against gender, against society, against caste. In fact, my theory is that we have yet to become a citizen. We became independent. We claim to be India, that is Bharat, Article 1. But all of us combined, even in this small panel of June, we are yet to become a citizen. We are a Bengali, we are a Brahmin, we are a postgraduate, we are a professor, we are a retired IAS officer, we work for myself, and there is none. In fact, if you say anyone who will tell Indian, he will be the last person. I'm not saying that I'm not included. We have so many layers of identity that identity as a citizen is lost. And if citizen has confusing loyalties, the same is reflected in a fractured mandate given to the political system. You analyze any election. I am also a student of political science. If I analyze any election, the clear mandate is not only confusing. Nobody knows what is the winning combination. In India, or for that purpose, even in Trump also, you cannot know why he's winning and why he should be losing. I leave it to the academic world to analyze because that is not my business, neither my domain. But fact remains that a citizen who has many layers also elects a government which has too many layers. And if those too many layers are reflected into policy prerogative, then the very purpose of the state remains under question. And I will give you a reason why I said innovative business model. This Indian innovation of managing contradiction through democratic legitimacy has given us a democracy where everybody can be equally unhappy, and that is the least we can do. And that is the best we have delivered. We are the only country in this region of Asia which has remained as a country. Our neighbors got divided. Our big neighbor yet to claim 2 territories. They are trying to compensate it through Ladakh areas. We are a territorially satisfied country. We are inward looking. We have never claimed that we are here to promote democracy globally or promote Hinduism or any other Indian, Oriental or Occidental culture. We are not. We have been tekten bhunjitha, if I am permitted to quote Rigved. Sahno bhunaktu. I mean, we had our internal culture that sharing and caring is the societal objective, and that got reflected in the citizens also. And that is why so many layers we can understand. Simultaneously, the way multitasking women are there, they can become a mother, wife, professor, and a citizen together without any time changing their roles. Same thing is true for citizen. Citizen is first a regional person, then a caste person, then a NGO person, then a government person, and ultimately he never remains a citizen. So this innovative model of government has given a policy mandate equal. In fact, Professor Amita Singh very, very clearly and very intelligently said, that the first decade we were really AtmaNirbhar. The whole policy was to make India independent. Our non-aligned policy itself was that we will not rely on anyone, but rely on ourselves. But that reliance resulted in a controlled, planned economy, where resources got allocated centrally, and the need and aspirations of vast millions of Indians could not be accommodated. Ultimately, it became such that by 91, we had $1 billion of forex reserve, and we had to give me our gold. I'm not saying what went wrong and what went right, but fact remains that this was the result of our so-called self-reliant at that point of time. There was nothing wrong with self-reliant, but the strategy that we adopted, import substitution, non-competition, controlling the oxygen itself, not managing oxygen, distributing the cake, not enhancing the cake. going socialist in distribution of already less assets than working for creation of more assets, right? Taking the cake, distributing the cake socially equally became the target of the government. Poverty hatao by making rich poorer. Poverty hatao by distributing everybody half a cow. Opening a school without teacher, opening hospital without medicine, opening beds without attendants. I'm not saying that was wrong. I'm only saying that was the approach, that expansionist state was the better state. If I'm present everywhere, that means government is governing. Governance was equated with presence of the state, not the governance of the state. Today things have changed. In 91, we got the first reform, which we should have done it in 47 itself. $125 per capita income, $150 per capita income, two big neighbors. Today we are at 2020, I spent $2,200 per capita purchasing power, and our neighbors are around 11,000 plus. I'm not competing with others because they are dissimilar economies. Why it all happened? What is the role that played by bureaucracy? In fact, a couple of mentions were made by about the Administrative Reform Commission. In fact, I was reminded of one quote from Nehruji. In fact, when Nehruji established our IIPA, we remain perpetually grateful for his dynamism and leadership. But he said, somebody asked, what is your regret in 63? He said, my biggest regret is that I could not change the colonial mindset of my bureaucrats. Same question was put to Mrs. Indira Gandhi. What is your biggest regret? She said, I need a revolution to change the mind and mindset of my own bureaucrat. Somebody has quoted Morarji Desai. He says, I was chairman of ARC, but when I became prime minister, my prime ministership was lost. I could not lay my hand on the same report that I had written. Even in ARC-2, which was headed by Birappa Moili, which is a tremendous act of faith, that how bureaucracy should work. For the first time, Bavarian model, Taylor model, and all those academic models have been merged into what is the good governance model. And good governance model tailor-made for Indian situation. And that was again, as rightly pointed out by Prof Singh, that it was reflected in the fifth pay commission. That we need this much of bureaucrat, but we need to pay them also. If Singapore Prime Minister is quoted, which is very relevant for India, if you pay for nuts, you get monkeys only. But 2.2 crore monkeys can shake a garden. They will not be able to grow a plant. Perhaps that is what we did collectively. I'm not saying some of us did not do the work. But this is the one side of what we call it innovation that India did. From a democracy to retaining the statehood, managing this diverse country, and continuing to remain as a state is a major achievement of Indian bureaucracy and Indian political system. Let's feel proud of that. Second is business. What is the business model that we adopted? I'm sorry if I'm taking a little longer time. The business model that we adopted was what we call it public good versus private good. All over the world, governments are created to do public good. Develop rasta, develop road, develop airport, develop ports, and so that everybody will get equally benefit. But we twisted our policy. We said that public good can wait, public good can wait. Let's also subsidize the private good because of our poverty. As you have rightly said, that giving ration, giving injection, giving vaccination, MMR, IMR, all those figures which are part of social capital buildup got more attention because the state money resources were used for subsidizing the private good. But it created a parasite of dependence. From cradle to grave, people wanted government to assist. In fact, there were some governments who gave 4 grams of Mangal Sutra also to the newlyweds. Not that it is essential, and I have no business to comment on somebody's policies. But fact remains that subsidizing private good became limitless because that was distributable. You can inaugurate that, you can lay your hands, you can give your name. So if you see the number of centrally sponsored programs, which were 15 or 20 in 1954, has become 700 plus centrally sponsored programs by the government of India alone. I was dealing with micro, small and medium enterprise. There are 365 programs run by union government. You forget the 28, 29 state government, which are supposed to be helping MSMEs. Today, the number of scholarships that a student can get, you cannot count how many number. If you are Divyang, one. If you are SC, one. If you are ST, one. If you are SC reading in government school, one. If you are SC reading in medical college differently. If you are doing PhD differently. I mean, there's so many variety of meaning of assistance that government has given that it looks like as a mockery of business model. What you wish to do. And there are street smart people who are getting everything. I know a person who studied fully subsidized, got professor in a subsidized college, became head of department of that college, became the chair of that college. Now his children are perpetually, and we are very quick to find out solution that mera beta mere bachchon ke sapnon ko saakar karega. I'm not talking political, I'm only talking bureaucracy. We created a self-perpetuating class where these private goods will be continuously subsidized and we never dare to change the policies. You see the plethora of policies and programs that are there for subsidizing private good. They are much more than what is there for doing public good. Money is only 100. 6% should go to health. From where? 6% should go to defense. From where? 6% to go to education. From where? 3% should go to women welfare. From where? 1% should go to the managing the justice system. From where? If you over-subsidize private goods, this dilemma is faced by any government. And then there is a popular backlash. If you stop Manrega, activists come. If you stop RTI, in fact, the government has only changed the condition of RTI commissioner. Whole commission was, the activists around RTI, they were up in arms that uska condition kaise kam kar sakte. Or you don't require Supreme Court just salary to be a just person. 22 साल का लड़का कलेक्टर बनता, he disposes the matters of district. He manages 15 lakh population and he becomes the Maibab without being appointed. And the fellow works for 24/7. Yesterday you have seen in the social media, an IS officer who has gone to the office with 1.5 month old child to her office. That is the commitment bureaucracy has. We have to satisfy 5 C's. CBI, CVC, CAG, Court, CIC, still then deliver. We have to suggest policies which are emotionally sustainable, financially viable, technologically doable, politically acceptable, intellectually convincing. Khan Market gang not opposing. Award Wapsi gang is still remaining in their house. Intellectual supporting. Kerala to Kashmir, Kanyakumari, everybody agreeing. Who can derive that policy? Manrega, how many opponents were there when it was launched? Everybody thought Manrega to aur kuch karne ki zarurat nahi hai. We require 30 Manrega type of schemes. Nowadays, need for Manrega in urban houses. But advocates of Manrega should feel ashamed that such a program is needed. We need a different solution. We need a different businesses. Government don't create wealth. Wealth is always created by individual. Nowhere in the government creates wealth. It is here we wanted the private sector to compete with the public sector. So the government will create the wealth. Government will distribute the wealth and government will manage the wealth. Government became player, referee, justice, as well as information seeker and information provider. So this dilemma was structure created. When you have 20 gates, you cannot remove the peons unless you remove some gates also. If you want a leaner bureaucracy, performing bureaucracy, edge-sharp bureaucracy, or you compare with that, America में तो 3 minute account खुल जाता है. यहाँ you need all banks to be linked. अमेरिका में तो प्रोफेसर हार्वर्ड जैसे होते हैं. हार्वर्ड का endowment is $30 billion. हमारे प्रोफेसर सैलरी देने के लिए कॉलेज में पैसे नहीं है. हमारे तो टुकड़े गएंगे celebrated than being condemned. I'm not saying all these things are result of it. I'm saying these are result of empty mind becomes devil's workshop. And no doubt why a Nobel laureate from India, he said that Indians are more argumentative. We are argumentative Indians. Has we been less argumentative, more decisive, less emotional, more actional? more functional than being entitlement. Here, everybody wants, is conscious for his rights. Very few people are entitled for his duties. It is very suitable for political class to distribute that. If I can't give you, I give you reservation. If I can't give you, I will enhance the age. If I can't give you, I open a college. If I can't give you, I will give an insurance. I'm not saying these are recipes for disaster. They're recipe for keeping you crippled. If citizens are AtmaNirbhar, country will become AtmaNirbhar. There is a very simple solution. But yes, it requires a very huge investment in government. A couple of things have been pointed out by Prof Amita Singh, that what we did post-COVID, what is the strategy that government is adopting? If you analyze the last 10 years or last 15 years, in fact, governments are continuum. Let's not blame one and another. Governance is continuum. Governments go and come and go. Bureaucracy is continuing. I mean, either good and evil, but it remains. Teachers of literature, education, they are continuum. It doesn't change with 1% or 2%. Like Honorable Prime Minister says, Shiksha Niti Rashtra ki niti hoti. Foreign policy, Rashtra ki policy hoti. Government ki policy nahi hoti, a person ki policy nahi hoti. I can't, even if I become tomorrow at the head of JNU, I will not change the culture, because I can only change the administrative element. I'm again coming to the institution, innovation, business where private good need to be reduced, and we need a lot of academic people to work on it, that so that the money saved can be invested in the sector where our heart is. Otherwise, our heart is in health, but our mind is in welfare. Kaisa kitna kam tax dena pade. So heart and mind are working together. But the model that I'm going to talk is about this. The model that we, at least I expect our academic world, and that is the minimum expectation from academic world, that why we don't have Harvard and Carnegie in India. Are we intellectually poor? Answer is no. Are we less endowed by Americans? Answer is no. Have we not visited these countries and found ourselves much superior than, in no case inferior than any one of them? Reason is that we are tuned to be Sarkar Nirbhar. Koi bolega tab karenge. Apne aap nahi kare. Let's say digital governance. All infrastructure was there before March 21 also. We were less digital. Today we are more digital. Circumstances forced, be adopted. Indians are the best in the adversity. In fact, I say the bureaucracy. We performed world class during war. During natural calamity, nobody can beat even a VLW. He will be doing work on the field, only looking for some word of praise from the collector. But during peacetime, even collector will be sleeping in his house. We have to do this balancing, that peace and war, we work with the same spirit. Same thing is for digital. Everybody was saying that India is doomed to failure. And the bureaucracy has failed, politicians have failed, together we have failed, and we enjoy failure. We don't learn, we enjoy, we celebrate failure, which is good. But we should not become demoted due to failures, because this impacts bureaucracy. There is self-fulfilling prophecy doctrine is there. If you say that bureaucrats are bad, after 30 years, they will say, "Hum to bad hai hi. Let me prove little more bad." As we have done for primary education, teacherless school. But there are so many innovations in the primary. Kerala is today top of the world in any sector of economy. The real input is education, real input is not governance. A good education has created an educated society. Educated society, a knowledge society, demands a good governance. Why the same thing not being replicated in Bihar, or for that UP where I come from? There is no pull for genuine services. There is pull for government largesse. सरकार से मेरे को क्या मिला, मुझको क्या मिला, whether I deserve it or need it, that it doesn't matter. एक सरपंच अगर 10 BPL कार्ड नहीं बनवा सकता तो नेता नहीं है, बेकार का. एक कलेक्टर अपने 2 रिश्तेदार की नौकरी नहीं दिला सकता तो बेकार है. ये नहीं कोई पूछता कि प्रोफेसर अगर 3 नोबेल लॉरेट नहीं तैयार कर सकता तो बेकार है. 900 universities in India, only 13 universities are producing even civil servants. What happened to the remaining 700? If you remove the IITs, the number of intake for civil services is, the awesome number is there, awful number is there. Ministry is not going to produce single IAS officer. I'm not saying that IAS is the gold standard of any education. You convert into a politician also. Let them produce a minister also from their institution. How many academic institutions are advising the government on making policies? I mean, there are some good articles. I would be failing in my duty in case I don't appreciate. I am myself product of a good teacher who taught me in right time, and perhaps I understood those sentences that he spoke to me. But today the age is not there. I can't solve 21st century problem with 18th century tool by any standard, even if I put the same resources. So the innovation, the new business, and the new model of governance that we are working need to be appreciated. Why this government is famous for? They are saying we will reform, perform, and transform. We all know reform is essentially political. If you take up reform in agriculture sector by removing the barriers, if you take reform in education sector by new education policy, you take up reform in financial sector by merging bank, you take up reform in health sector by creating more AIMS and more digital clinics and all those things. You take reform in ease of doing business, something was pointed out, ease of living, certain things are needed to be there. The whole aim of government is to reduce the bureaucracy so that citizens become AtmaNirbhar. And the pain points for and due to bureaucracy are reduced to the minimum. It is this innovation, it is this business, it is this model which can make bureaucracy not Sarkar Nirbhar but Janta Nirbhar, and make the citizens not Sarkar Nirbhar but AtmaNirbhar. And if these two become reality, no power on earth can stop India from becoming a superpower. Couple of more points I would like to say, because during this corona, everybody feeling that we are going down, हमारा क्या होगा, India तो डूब जाएगा, ऐसा नहीं है. In April, we were collecting 32,000 crores of GST. Last month, we have collected 96,000 crores. We are up to the level of September 19. So they need to be rejoiced. It has all happened because some bureaucrats are working somewhere. Some industrialists are producing their goods and services. India is not sleeping. You take a one consumption of power, 11 billion units of power were consumed on 31st of March when India was locked down. Today it has gone to 113 billion units of power. It is almost September 18 level, 2018. You take a foreign reserve, it used to be $400 billion. Despite all these things, of course, the less use of petroleum product has reduced our import dependence also. But today our forest, which was in 91, $1 billion US, today we are having a $550 billion of forest reserve. The number of colleges, number of universities, number of IITs, number of IIMs, all these things are factories of knowledge, and they will produce the Indians which are future ready, which are ready to control, manage the Fortune 500 companies globally and create unicorns in India also. If you see all these things into unison, then you will understand why Startup India, Stand Up India, Digital India, Mudra Loan, first batch of entrepreneurs which are low cost, high batch of entrepreneurs, government guarantee given. This government is not in the business of promoting what we call it, the subsidizing private goods. We are slowly emerging towards saving money and enhancing the public sector and public good. If we see in this direction, the role of bureaucracy, the role of political system, and our political economy in general appears to be perfectly in good health, despite having pre-existing, pre-corona diseases. But yes, Indians are unique in solving their own problem in its Indian way. Who can think that with a country with 526 languages, with all 50 major religions represented, with every teen course per badale pani, course per badale pani, such a diverse country can still remain one nation with one flag. And now some more area has been added to the same, one flag, one nation. We feel proud to be Indian, and we should sell this becoming merchant of hope than merchant of death. And we should not become merchant of pennies. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for giving a chance. Thank you.
Sir, it was really very wonderful listening to you. And sir, in economics, we say it inefficiencies in the system, the private good which you were raising, rightly so. I am sure that is also linked with a lot of inclusion and exclusion error in terms of beneficiaries. I'm sure our chair will touch upon these issues and many issues. I'll just come to the issue legitimacy, and as also Dr. Haran mentioned that Atmanirbhar is also Atmavishwas, self-confidence, and also Atmasamman, respect. Tripathi sir is also highlighting that Atmanirbhar is also something which is sustainable. Very aptly, he's making that point. And sir also mentioning one very important point I thought to really put forth, that USA has a population of 33 crores and they have 50 states. We have a population of, now it will be 140, almost, 1.4 crores, and we have around 30 states. So really the pressure which is getting into the system, and now also this self-reliance also in the digital sectors. For example, we all know the Indian Express news that Zhangzhou, the company, data company, spying, I think all of us, even our website was hacked. So those things also coming. So how really we can defend ourselves and have our system ready even in all the disaster, as sir also mentioning that we really are strong during the bad times, Indians. And really the macroeconomy has been the strong. That has been really the silver lining amidst this time. I'm sure we can have more of these economic discussions. So quickly, I'll go to Dr. Poonam Munjal. But before that, I will really, since we have exceeded our time limit, I will ask our chair and also Prof Amita Singh so that we can extend the session. Yes, chair. Mic is
Sure. I think I don't have any problem, but
right.
Professor Amita Singh, I would.
Yes, so we can also have one more round so that everyone, I think, if unless someone has to go, then they can inform us so that they can come before. So without wasting any time and further ado, let me welcome Dr. Poonam Munjal. Dr. Poonam Munjal is Senior Fellow at the National Council of Applied Economic Research, just adjacent to IIPA. Ma'am, welcome, please.
Yes, good evening, everyone. This has been really an insightful evening for me. I've been looking forward to listen to Professor Singh. I think the wait had been worth it. And also very insightful comments coming from all the panelists, academicians like Professor Surya and from bureaucracy perspective. So it has been really enlightening. But I, being economic researcher, I think touch upon some of the headline issues and some of the very specific issues. And I like to be very brief after such insightful details which everybody has shared. So I'll talk about a bit of both positive and somewhat negative issues regarding Atmanirbhar Bharat mission. The pandemic itself, I think, brought some of the very welcome changes in the economic scenario and in the production scenario of our economy. Today we are talking about digitization. I mean, without digitization, I don't think we would have survived. We are working from home since March, and this has been possible only because of digitization. We are talking about technology-driven sectors. Our farm sector is now technology-driven. There has been artificial intelligence in the farm sector and manufacturing sector. So that has been really remarkable. And not to forget the extensive, technology being used in healthcare and education sector. So other keywords which we have been talking about all this while has been, of course, localization and self-reliance, which is Atmanirbharta. So, something which everybody has kind of touched upon is that globalization, which was earlier it was considered to be a necessity, but now it's really localization. But I think most of these Atmanirbhar reforms were really long due, which Professor Singh also mentioned in her talk. Some of these reforms were already, lined up and they were waiting to get implemented. And now after, this pandemic has resulted in some of these, so at least some of the reforms have got a push, otherwise which would have taken, even more time to get implemented, now has taken a little shorter period of time. And some of the achievements which AtmaNirbhar Bharat has brought about have been remarkable. But really, I think our businesses are smart enough to, converting problem into opportunity. So there was problems, but then they converted it into opportunity. You just remove some of the roadblocks and just see the results. So some of the reforms which are implemented were quickly taken up by the businesses, and we saw, various policy, a lot of economic growth coming up because of these reforms. In fact, just to mention some of the healthcare results, the certified manufacturers of PPE kits, which were earlier just 52 in number, increased to 600. And we were producing less than one PPE kit a day earlier. And within a span of 4 months, we were producing more than 4.5 lakh kits every day. So that's really remarkable. So that must have resulted from both, opportunity being there, demand is there, and also some of the push which came from the government. I will also say that, just touching upon some of the very specific reforms which pertain to MSMEs. As I said earlier, these whatever announcements were made to give a boost to MSME sector were long due. The change in definition to include turnover as criteria and the provision of collateral-free automatic loans to MSME sectors was what was being advocated by industry associations for a very, very long time. So at least this pandemic has, curtailed the time which it might have taken to get all these implemented. In any case, manufacturing sector, there has been a really specific push for MSME sector, but in any case, manufacturing sector needed a push. Our industrial, contribution in GDP and both employment and GDP has been pretty much dismal. All this, it has been historical that the contribution of manufacturing sector has not been up to the mark. While most of the economies, evolved from agrarian to industrialized nation and then to services sector, we really bypassed the industrialization phase and we jumped to the services driven economy. So in any case, our manufacturing sector needed a boost. So AtmaNirbhar Bharat has really helped, push some of the reforms which the industry was looking for a very long time. And we just hope that the results will also show up. In terms of both employment, manufacturing sector contributes just about 8% and value added just about 16 to 17%. We just hope that whatever, policy reforms have happened on the manufacturing sector really show up some results. But on the same time, at the same time, I would like to say that while manufacturing sector did need a push for a very long time, but current drivers of growth have been services. And the recent reforms have kind of neglected some of the services sector, as like transport or tourism. Tourism is in a very bad shape. Entertainment industry. So in any case, we don't have a headline number for services sector. Like we talk about index of industrial production, despite the fact that industry is not such a big contributor to GDP, but there is no headline, tracking parameter for services sector. So services sector has been a little bit of, has been neglected, I think, in the current series of reforms which we have seen. But on the flip side of all this, I would say that, these reforms have really assumed that perhaps one size will fit all. That is not true. So like if MSMEs were given some certain kind of push, assuming that the same policy will really benefit all, had that been the case, then a lot of MSMEs would not have shut down despite the policy reforms that were announced for them. So it would have been, and in any case, we have been talking about evidence-based policy decisions. But I think in the desperation of announcing some of the reforms, evidence-based decision has not really taken place. So had it been, given certain kind of push to the sectors which have strong backward linkages, rather than those which are relatively less stronger backward linkages, then perhaps the benefits would have been, more evident. In fact, manufacturing sector, which are known to have very strong backward linkages, as they require inputs from other sectors. So whatever activity is taking place in the manufacturing sector, very fast trigger in other activities in the economy takes place. Similarly, services sectors have very high forward linkages because they are being used as inputs in the production of other economic sectors. So those kinds of, very in-depth analysis should have taken place. And in fact, another example, recent example, which Professor Singh also talked about, which again, refutes this saying that one size cannot, actually one size cannot fit all, is the imposition of FCRA bill. So it is another example of, wrong, little bit of lack of in-depth research. The bill is, which is supposed to be of national interest and help in achieving the ambition of AtmaNirbhar Bharat also, but it was maybe not fair to assume the malicious international funding for all the NGOs which are there. And NGOs have played very, very critical role during this pandemic times and the lockdown times, when they were supporting all those people who were looking for help, migrant workers, and free distribution of food and whatnot. So, but now the NGOs are in a very difficult position, and it's really becoming impossible for them to survive. So the key takeaway, which I would like to reiterate, is that perhaps evidence-based policy decision is really important, and it should have been an in-depth analysis and a deep dive into the sectors which are being given the reforms should have taken place. That's all from my side. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Munjal. I would also like to, as ma'am rightly mentioned, that the recovery from here is not going to be V, rather K-shaped, meaning by some of the sectors has been really hurt badly by the COVID, like ma'am really highlighted travel, tourism, hospitality, whereas IT and other companies are having the upward trend. Professor Pangadia has also mentioned that India can get to a not a recovery, but to a growth path of more than 6%. If things go really well. And there is also due to the US-China trade war, we all know that the global supply chain is working for what we call that race to the bottom. So India is also trying to have an opportunity to develop our capacities to do that. Next, we have our another panel, Shri Rohit Chahal, National Media in charge of Bharatiya Janata Yuva Morcha. Somehow he's not been able to join due to some meeting, but I have his key takeaway message, what as youth of especially BJYM. The point he's really making is that how the administrative reforms towards Atmanirbhar Bharat can be effective for the aspiration of youth, gender inequalities or to ensure gender equities, and also harness the power of digital India, especially how our new youth, or what we call generation alpha, or these millennials, so many words we have, but the new youth and the new kind of challenges we have also mentioned about MSME, startup, many things. Shri Tripathi ji also mentioned about startup and other things. Our organization, Impact and Policy Research Institute, is also Government of India recognized startup, and we have also been able to get a lot of support from government. So most of our IT tech, capacity are as par with the US, and thankfully because of these schemes. And uh, what I will do that we have some more question, but Prof Amita Singh, would you like to answer first? Then we can have specific discussion on some themes.
Yeah, I can see only one question coming up, which is, whether the Farm Bill is going to create Atmanirbharta. The question is, I cannot really say that, because Farm Bill is yet to be implemented and yet to come down to those who need it. And it's, too early to comment on that.
Right, right. Ma'am, I have also noted down few points based on your lecture. I would really like to bring forth that one thing, ma'am, you rightly mentioned from the business's point of view, that there is a lot of market inefficiency in terms of hoarding. We all see the inflation and what is CPI, Consumer Price Index, or WPI. How administrative reform or how the administration can check that, especially you mentioned about the cement industry. I work on real estate sector. The Builders Association based in Mumbai have been, I think more than for a decade, have complained Competition Commission of India so many times because of the prices of the cement and other raw materials. I would say most of the times that efficiency comes a lot for all the contracts, or I would say the cost part. Then, ma'am, you also mentioned a lot of the things. We also have the new, especially this year and from the last budget, we have announced something called National Infrastructure Pipeline of more than 1 crore. That investment is also going on. We also have our urban transformation project, Swachh Bharat Mission, smart cities, Amrut, DNULM, so many those schemes. Mudra sir has also. Now all the departments have their MIS, Management Information System database, which is coming in real time. We really have that administrative data coming up, and all the departments and program now also have dashboard. So how that can be integrated and really used for effective delivery of the services. And we also have many other initiatives like Pragati, proactive governance, which the Prime Minister himself uses to interact with all the district commissioners. And MyGov app is something which our government have for this interaction. Earlier in Planning Commission, we had Program Evaluation Organization. Now we have in Niti Aayog something called DMEO, Development Monitoring and Evaluation Organization. But really nothing much is coming out from that as output, which we can really use for the development or reforms in any sector. Other than that, I really had one query. Arogya Setu, many things, of course, we have. I think the digital point is covered. Ma'am, most of the schemes, CAG gives us report every now and then, and it highlights the inefficiencies. What in your view should be done with the CAG report, or how insightful it is? We also have Parliament Standing Committee on each of the schemes. That also comes up with very good nuanced understanding of the issues. So how that can be internalized and made effective so that programs are also evolving and changing. And I think, ma'am, I'll for the sake of time, I will stop here. And ma'am, you can also have some conversation with our panelists, or then we can go to panelists one by one for two minutes. Yes.
I'll just quickly respond to what you said. You've actually unfolded the whole of the government policies and programs, and there's no one stop answer to everything. But I can say that right now there's a loss of legitimacy which is shaping up the system of governance. You can see daily newspaper, and what are the kind of news that are capturing all the pages? Where are these programs mentioned? Where is the space for these programs in the newspapers? They are not being conveyed, they are not being shared, they are not being discussed, and also the consultation processes with people is not taking place. What is happening to the parliamentary committees is not hidden from anywhere. Now, the parliamentary committees are not able to function because first time what is happening is that the unanimity and congeniality of parliamentary committees is exposed in the newspaper. It has never happened earlier. So these are the things under these circumstances, it's very preposterous, to say certain things will never happen or likely to happen.
Right. Thank you. I think we can start with chair and then go for 1 to 2 minutes comments. And ma'am, many questions are coming on Facebook, other places. I am collating, then I'll come again. Yes. Chair, please.
I would like to begin by complimenting all the main speaker, Prof Amita Singh, followed by all the speakers, and everyone gave a very nice perspective, which essentially corroborates the main presentation by Professor Amita Singh. That's one thing which I really, whether we are talking about Dr. Nivedita Haran or whether Professor Tripathi or Professor Poonam, all the things, all the panelists really gave their perspective, and I don't want to repeat it because we have Dr. Arjun has already summarized it, and there's no point me repeating and taking away time. So I think it was a very illuminative and a very informative, enlightening discussion that we had. So that is one thing which I would like to have. I think I don't know whether it has come out very clearly. I think a couple of things which possibly I would like to highlight. What by listening to Professor Poonam gave a very economic perspective or evaluation of the whole program, and from the positive as well as negative side, etc. So I would like to. I think there are couple of important messages which come out. Which Dr. Arjun, would you like to highlight it, or should I summarize? My perspective should I give?
Sir, I think we can go to the panel during your concluding remarks. I think.
Okay,
yeah.
I'll do that then. I think then.
Yes.
Yeah, then we'll invite the panel to give comment.
Yes, Dr. Haran. Yes.
Thank you. I will touch upon a couple of points. One is a question that came to my mind, and I was also asked this question very recently, whether this AtmaNirbhar program has come at the right time. I think, it's a kind of response also to what some of the panelists mentioned. Perhaps the fact that in 47 to 50, a lot of things that could have come had not come. And then things moved. As it moved, it was firefighting, reaching 91, and then there post 91. I think probably AtmaNirbhar Bharat, if such a thing had come much earlier, we would probably have done much better. That is how I look at it. The second thing is that, it is always very easy to say these things on hindsight, but it is also true that we still need to, and I reiterate this point, we still need to really emphasize more and more on actually doing things rather than, on the policy and the act part of it. We often joked in Kerala that we have so many laws that we often forget that some of these laws contradict each other. And I think that is the reason why Kerala has done so well. We have been able to do things, what we had, and build upon it, whether it is in the sector of health or education or even good governance. I think those things come as the entire bureaucracy and the civil services. And by civil service, I mean not just the higher civil service, but the entire gamut of civil servants. When they work together to ensure that what is assigned to them to be done is actually done. I think that mentality has to come. And I think that's a kind of lesson we can learn from countries like South Korea, where they out of 100% of their time, probably 98% is spent on actually implementing things rather than going ahead and discussing and politicizing and so on and so forth. The other point I want to mention is that finding India-centric solutions. I think that is something that was lacking in our country. We had these little district collectors doing things in their little kingdom, but then that replicability never happened. And good projects which had been done by our district collectors, by even our sub-collectors and even lower level officials, even at village level, never got replicated. They always stayed as little innovations or little service interventions at that level. I think that mentality has to change. When one comes across a good project which has really made a difference, I think we should learn to ensure that that gets replicated all over the country. And that can happen only when the government adopts it and to some extent imposes it on others. And there's no harm in doing that. And I think institutions like IIPA and so on are doing that, case studies and so on. But it should not be half-hearted. It should be done whole hog. If something has worked, whether it's in the health sector, education sector, infrastructure sector, and it's good, it has shown results, it should be replicated. I think that would be the best result of good governance that I can think of. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, ma'am, for highlighting these points. Next, I would really like to go to Tripathi, sir, but I really want to ask few questions with sir, really, with your permission, sir. Some points I really wanted to raise, yes. India now, sir, we really moving onto the path of new India, and wherein our target was $5 trillion. That really comes from the confidence that during the last 5-6 years, we really doubled our economy. And now, since the last ARC was there, now our economy has, doubled, tripled, 4 times, I would say. And now we have to double. We also have doubling the farmers' income by 2022. I would say not very, very ambitious goal. In fact, we would like that to happen. And so now we have a very different economy altogether. We have blockchain, artificial intelligence, future of work. China is doing something called industry IoT, Internet of Things, and so many things. Our macroeconomy is really strong. And sir, in your view, because you really mentioned Taylor and all the basic tenets also from the PubAd, really from using those things, sir, how the bureaucracy or administration can also lead efficiently in wealth creation, wealth management, and then distribution, you really highlighted, and what the approach should administration take towards realizing this goal for New India. Yeah, thank you, sir.
But first, that government has no business to be in the business. If that is accepted, many things will fall in line. Because government cannot be a wealth creator, managing Indian Oil, managing petrol pumps, managing the ration shops and all those things. They have to liberate government from these things because they occupy more time than the total value that they create. True, I would suggest that ease of doing business, which is where our heart and mind should be. Today, about 1,700 acts, about 100,000 points of compliances need to be done by any entrepreneur. If those are reduced to minimum, let's say 1 act, 1 application, and 1 time jail for all the non-compliances, perhaps it will be easier. Third and final would be, if we create skilled manpower from the universities and academic bodies, it is these citizens, it is these students who will become future citizens. Tomorrow is created by the the children of today. We are a spent force in bureaucracy and politics. There is said that you reach only to the top when all your energy is finished. But that is not true for a state. We are a state of 1.3 billion people, and the innovation will come from younger generation. You see, you analyze the top 500 Fortune companies. Who are their CEOs? The average of their CEOs is around 45 to 50. Where in India, you will not find a CEO. State Bank of India headed by 58-year, and I will not leave it all those areas. Future leaders, future unicorns, future wealth creators will come from these young students who are reading today. Maybe with after Corona, it is unlocked. And bureaucracy, as has been pointed out by my colleague, there are a lot of success, but there is no institution building. One. And two, the bureaucratic success is not institutional. Same collector successful in Calicut will fail miserably in Gaya. Not because he has changed, but ecosystem is different. Same thing is true for any other business, be it governance or otherwise. So I am one of those who believe that governance, good governance require governance first, then use ITs, AI, IoT and all those tools to make it good governance, perhaps better governance. And the best governance is that where governance is invisible like electricity, only appliances are visible like your electronic watch and this and that. Maybe that could be a dream, but that's how the Sapno ke Saudagar hum log hain. And we should sell hope that India is not only AtmaNirbhar, it is going to be a $5 trillion economy. If $5 trillion economy comes, that will come at 9% growth year on year for next 10 years or maybe 20 years. But it will happen only when we put all the nuts and bolts into proper place. Where state has less role, entrepreneurs have more role, banks are stronger, education system is delivering, and rest of the things are falling into line. It will not happen because there is a plan. It will happen because there is execution plan and there is ruthless implementation, so that we don't again go into the loop of argumentative and keep on remaining all the arguments alive, never solving a problem. Couple of points have been raised by Professor Singh. I would like to respond to one of them, that committees and all these things, the parliamentary committees, the decisions and all these things. There is a doubt is being spread. I think we should not become victim to that, that the legitimacy of government is in question. The legitimacy of, we are the only country where we want government to be renew its legitimacy every day. When there is a constitutional provision for once in a 5 year. We are only democracy which want government of the day to be accountable to anything happening anywhere, even if they are not responsible for it. And then we find out, as I have said, that should I respond or do not respond, depend upon the color of the victim, not the event. And in such societies, these things do matter, because create a sense of self-doubt, perpetuate that doubt 100,000 times, million times, people start believing in that. We have till 1600 AD, ma'am, you are a student of history, anyone can know that till 1820, 1820, sir, we were having the global share of 24%. Asian powers were having. China and India were controlling 24% of global share. Today in 2020, I mean only 200 years back, India's share in global market is less than 3%. China has retained its 17%, and today they are factory of the world. We might have adversity in terms of at borders, but there are a lot of things that need to be studied and perhaps cut, paste, and copied also. A good governance means governance for a longer term. Legitimacy of government must not be put to question by the self-proclaimed media and all those group of people. I'm not saying what is good and what is bad. We all know how media has been manipulated. When Corona should have been discussed, Ria's murder is being discussed. When Ria's murder could have been discussed, we are discussing Hathras. Tomorrow, Hathras Plus will be discussed. I'm not against media by any reason, but fact remains that good news is no news. A good bureaucrat is a bad bureaucrat in the eyes of law, but kuch to galti hoga, find out. And if we are not cheerleaders for Indians, we don't celebrate the success of people like Amita Singh, Haran and Professor Munjal and Professor Satnan, who else will sing our song? You go to any country in the world, they always talk of Harvard. Harvard se padha hai ki nahi hai? हमारे यहाँ JNU से पढ़ा रहे तो टुकड़े टुकड़े वाला होगा, इलाहाबाद से पढ़ा है तो भैया होगा, मुंबई से पढ़ा है तो ऐसा होगा. I mean, we level them first before meeting. And we prejudge where it is not needed, we don't judge where it is needed, and we do nothing where both things are needed. Maybe I am sounding slightly cynical because at age 61, you can only become like that. But fact remains that unless we call, there is a tendency that if truth is not questioned for a long, people have start believing that that must be truth. Same thing is true for untruth also. India is prospering in its own way. No country has prospered in its neighbor's way. If Pakistan will develop, it will develop at Pakistan rate of growth. When India was developing at 3.2, we were condemned to be Hindu rate of growth, as if being Hindu is a crime. When we became at 9% growth, nobody said that this is non-Hindu or Islamic or further to the Christian rate of growth. We derive pleasure in putting India in a negative connotation. I would like to say that collectively we must put a growth story first, critical aspect second, and hostile element as far as possible least. Maybe it is too much to ask for in a single seminar, but choti si aasa to rehti hai. Thank you very much for giving me a chance. And I must compliment each one of you for giving me a chance. Friends, I will be walking out right now, perhaps with your consent. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We will also, sir, just quickly wrap. And thank you, growth story first. And who all will sing our song? Very nice words. We really look forward to listen more to you, sir. Quickly, I'll go to Dr. Poonam Munjal. But as Dr. Haran also mentioned that why it is happening at this time, I would really like to add that the whole global scenario has been such that this phenomena of protectionism, which is also in global debate, it is coming as deglobalization, and economies becoming nationalist economies. So that this is a phenomena we'll have to look into trade and many other dimensions. So I would quickly ask Dr. Munjal to give her concluding thoughts, and then we can go to our chair. Yes.
Yeah, I also kind of mentioned in my talk that perhaps AtmaNirbhar Bharat mission was, I mean, this of course is the good time to have it implemented, but really it was long due, and had it happened long time back, more benefits would have been reaped by all the production sectors of the economy. So I totally believe in that. And very, very thankful to all distinguished panelists here, and would really like to congratulate Dr. Arjun for organizing such event where diverse areas of panelists from all kinds of areas are there, and I can see that there are people who can suggest policy decisions, and people who are policy suggesters, so we can policy makers also. So it's really a great combination of panelists, and I would really like to congratulate Dr. Arjun, and thank you very much for having me here. Thanks a lot. I'll just stop here.
Thank you, Dr. Munjal. Yes, Chair, Professor Surya, please. Sir, because of the time, because ma'am has also answered many things on the chat box. If there'll be anything, I will email. So, in the interest of time, yes, let us.
No, I think I'll just thank you and congratulate everyone for a very informative discussion. And maybe I will just summarize my perception of the whole discussion in three sentences. I think there is a very clear anonymity among all these speakers, and followed by Professor Dr. Amita Singh, that that should be very clear. While the AtmaNirbhar as a policy objective and as a reform measure is well appreciated and well welcome, there's a great need for a clear revised thinking on the formulation, implementation, monitoring, and evaluation process. I think that is one thing very clearly. So maybe the different speakers touch upon different dimensions. For instance, Professor Nivedita, Dr. Nivedita highlighted about the values, and she also talked about the accountability, transparency. So in detail, she told different speakers touch upon different issues. Whereas Professor Tripathi touched upon even the change in the work culture and also the innovation in the business model. And one thing which possibly which came very implicitly is that administrative reform. I think that the whole work culture and redefining the work ethics and also the scope. I think repeatedly emphasized. I think that is one thing which really comes out, for the success of AtmaNirbhar. What is the main message which comes? I think that is one thing which I really appreciated from Professor Tripathi. That is one thing. And Professor Poonam also pointed out, which before that even Professor Amita Singh also pointed out, essentially what is the role of ICT. Professor Poonam also told how digitization has played very critical in our response to this, the COVID pandemic. But for that, in our digital success or effective implementation, we have not been successful. That's what she was telling. At the same time, Professor Amita Singh also pointed out, for example, she was referring to the e-office system failure. So, essentially, where are the loopholes that we have to really to think about it? I think so. These 2 points out very clearly: role of ICT, the need for revised reform outlook approach on the ICT role in the implementation of the AtmaNirbhar, and also the ARC. I think these are the 2 important issues which comes out from their discussion. I think I will stop it and I really thank Dr. Arjun, you and all the speakers, Professor Amita Singh, Dr. Poonam, and Dr. Shri Tripathi, and also Dr. Nivedita, for a very insightful presentation and discussion. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Professor Amita Singh, really, to have I really want, I have this picture because this really summarizes what you have to say. Ma'am, quickly, 1-2 minutes as conclusion. Yes. Ma'am, please unmute. Yes.
Yeah, I'm saying everything has been said, and I just have to really thank, Dr. Poonam Munjal, Dr. Nivedita P. Haran, Professor M.H. Suryanarayan, and Arjun, of course, to you and to Tripathi ji for excellent inputs that actually energized the whole discussion today. Thank you very much, all of you, for being together and in the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, ma'am. Now let me officially give just a small propose a vote of thanks to everyone, especially chair for the session, Professor M.H. Suryanarayana, joining us from Mumbai, Professor Amita Singh joining us from Delhi, and ma'am, Professor Dr. Haran joining us from Noida, but really pointing out so many of important points. Sorry, ma'am, I said Karnataka. I thought we lost you that time. So yes, my mind was somewhere else. Yes, and really then also Shri S. Tripathi sir for really putting forth so many, I would say, very, I would say, emotionally charged comments which he has raised really. And also Dr. Poonam Munjal for really highlighting this technical and economic sector points. And Shri Rohit Chal could not come. Perhaps we'll have him some other day. The topic was so vast. We all have been trying to cover so many things, like indirect tax, so many areas. I think we have not been able to cover so many aspects. But I really like to congratulate Professor Amita Singh again for really having this lecture, putting forth her energy, and our chair for the session, working toward this very important deliberation on this topic. And thank you again, Dr. Haran, Dr. Munjal, Tripathi sir, for having this event. Thank you, everyone. Have a nice evening.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.